as the weather's starting to turn nicer, I'm starting to be drawn to the warmer tones of colours. And today I'm creating a really bright, happy, clean and simple card with just a few ink blending techniques, die cutting and stamping. What's more, this is easy to use with any stamp set or design that you have in your stash, so let's get creative together. I'm Verity and welcome to my YouTube channel and blog Pretty Little Button, where I make paper crafting tutorials for the everyday crafter. So this is part of the Altenew Adventures Ahead blog hop, so I'll give some more details about that later on in the video. I'm using some new products from Altenew today. This is the Sisters of the Heart stamp, die and colouring set. And I'm going to use all three of them in today's video. Now, first of all, I'm going to create the background and I want to mask off an area for some ink blending. So I'm using some Altenew masking paper and I'm just trimming this down to match the size of my card panel. So I'm going to create a A2 card panel and I'm just trimming this down to an A2 size. So that is 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. So with the masking paper, the decorative side is the actual side that you peel off to reveal the adhesive. So I'm going to cut out a square from the masking sheet, just using a square die, because I want to create a window for which to blend on. I've peeled off the decorative side of the sheet, so that's the backing sheet, to reveal the temporary adhesive on the masking sheet. And I find I do need to sort of de-stickify this a little bit, and I just peel it and push it onto my clothes just several times just to reduce the stickiness. Once I've positioned that over the card panel, I'm ready to start ink blending, and this is going to give me a really lovely crisp white space around my square. I'm using the Altenew blending brushes here. I've got the small ones today because I'm just using my small ink pads as well, but you can use the larger ones at the same time. I've sped it up because I am building up the colour quite slowly. These blending tools allow you to get a lovely soft blend, and I started off with fresh lemon yellow. Then I'm using coral berry at the bottom and blending this up into the fresh lemon, overlapping them, and I get a beautiful lovely orangey colour in between. Now, as I said, these are the blending tools, so they do apply the ink colour very lightly and you just build it up. If you prefer a darker, intense colour, then obviously you can use a blending tool with a foam applicator to get that darker consistency. I go back and forth between all the colours just to ensure that I get a lovely smooth blend. Now, before I remove the masking paper, I want to add a little bit more interest, and I'm just adding some paint splatters to the ink blended area. I didn't remove the mask because I want the splatters to stay within the square space and have that beautiful crisp white space later on. So I'm using the Altenew watercolour 14 pan metallic set, and I'm using some of the sort of red and bronzy colours within that paint set just to add a little bit of paint splatter to that background. And I've set that off to one side to dry, and whilst I'm doing that I'm working on the rest of the card. So I've just taken one of the floral images from the Sisters of the Heart stamp set and positioned this in my MISTI, and I'm inking it up with my Altenew permanent black crisp ink and stamping this down onto a piece of white cardstock. I'm going to be using the Sisters of the Heart colouring stencil, and on the back of that stencil it shows you the layering guide of layering the stencils up to colour each of the floral images. So it depends on which floral image you stamped. You can then look at the backing and determine which stencil and which aspect of the stencil you need to apply the ink for that design. So I'm just finding the correct part of the stencil for the leaves, lining that up and then adhering it down with some washi tape. Again, I'm going to ink blend over the top of this. You could obviously heat emboss, you could put textured paste through the stencil as well. It doesn't have to just be ink. I've got lime here, the green, and I'm using again the blending tool just to apply the ink through. I'm not going to go through all the colours, show you all the colouring of the stencil because it is quite simple once you've done it once. You just apply the colour. Now I'm just adding a little bit of extra detail of adding a slightly darker colour of fresh leaf towards the inners just to add a bit of shading. But remember, this colouring stencil is also kind of a layering stencil, so you will get two different kind of layers that you can add to create more interest to your leaves and your flowers, so it will give that depth and dimension. As I mentioned, this is part of a blog hop with Altenew. If you're watching this video on my YouTube channel, make sure you head over to my blog where you can find out more details, comment along for your chance to win. Altenew are giving away a total of $300 worth of prizes to many lucky winners. So I've been colouring the floral image in using the layering stencil, just aligning each layer. And for the colours, I am using the Red Cosmos mini ink cube set. So this has 4 ink colours within a pink red colour tone that each one gets slightly darker, which is perfect for this because there are 4 layers. So I get a beautiful sort of corally pink flower. I used the coordinating to die cut that out. And now my panel is dry from the paint splatter, I can remove the masking tape. Now I do this gently because I don't want to tear the paper. If you find that your masking sheet is a bit too sticky when you're taking it off, then you do need to make sure that before you adhere it down, you try to remove some of that stickiness. And as I say, I like to pop mine on a piece of clothing and peel it off several times just to add a bit of fluff to that stickiness so it won't tear my paper. If it does tear, and I had a tiny little bit of tear on one edge, all I did was I just trimmed the panel down to remove that little extra tear, and you wouldn't notice the difference. If I hadn't mentioned it, you probably wouldn't have seen it. And obviously the peel and reveal is the best bit, and you get this beautiful soft ink blended background, that panel, that window where you can place your focal sentiment with all that lovely crisp white area remaining. So to determine where I want to position the sentiment, I like to place the focal element on the card, and I pop this in my MISTI because then I can play about with the positioning of the stamp until I'm happy with where the stamp is. Once I'm happy, I can then close my MISTI door, pick up the sentiment, remove my focal element, and I can then stamp the sentiment down. And I stamped this in a black ink just to get some real clarity and crispness with the sentiment. And I went for black because I just really wanted to contrast against that white area. So I foam mounted the panel onto a white card base, and then I'm also foam mounting the floral onto the card as well. And I move about so many times to try and determine where the best place is to position it. If you're interested in any of the products I've used today, there is a list in the links in the description box below. I've also got several more projects over on my blog using some of the new products from Altenew Adventures Ahead release that has been released today. If you're new to my channel, why not think about subscribing and hitting that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up. Until next time, happy crafting!